What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I'm your host, Zach, with my two co-hosts, Josh and Mike. Today, we're actually on episode 50 of the Engage 8 podcast. It's been a really long road. It's been a great road, I think. We can all agree upon it. We've made it kind of far, and we're looking to do great things in the future as we get to 75, 100. So, yeah. But in today's episode, we're going to be going over basically the first 24 to 48 hours of the free agency legal tampering period that started yesterday on Monday, and it is currently Tuesday, March 12th. So everything has been agreed upon, but nothing can get legally finalized until the official league year tomorrow at, I believe, 4 o'clock Eastern. And then we're also going to continue our division recaps of the 2023 season with the AFC and NFC West. But first, you want to get us started with some free agency stuff, Josh?
Yeah, I'll open us up on our first segment here for free agency. I'm gonna go over all the big time offensive free agents. Zach's gonna give a couple of his favorites, then Mike is gonna go over all the big time defensive free agents, and Zach will give a couple of his favorites there. But bear with me because this is gonna be a mouthful here. Starting off with quarterback, Kirk Cousins, 4 years, 180 mil for the Atlanta Falcons. Baker Mayfield re-signed Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 3 years, 100 mil. Russell Wilson was cut by the Broncos, signed with the Steelers for 1 year, 1 mil. Minshew going to the Raiders. Brissett, Patriots. Jameis Winston signed with the Cleveland Browns. Did you guys catch that? I didn't even see that. Was that while we were hooping earlier today?
No, that was this morning.
I didn't even see that. Must have been must have been catching some Z's on that one. I kind of like that for them. But Jameis to the Browns, and then that's basically all the relevant ones. Sam Darnold to the Vikings as well. Moving on to running back, Saquon Barkley signed with the Eagles, 3 years, 37 mil. He got paid. Took a little bit of a pay cut, but he got paid there. Josh Jacobs going to the Packers, 4 years, 48 mil. In response to that, I believe, where is Aaron Jones not on this list? I guess he's
Well,
not.
he
Aaron Jones
he
signed with the
signed he
Vikings,
signed with
right?
the Vikings 1 year for $7 million.
Yeah, okay. I don't know why that's not on here. Okay, Aaron Jones did sign with the Vikings, as I thought. Austin Eckler, Commanders, Tony Pollard, Titans, Derrick Henry to the Ravens, which is just scary to even imagine
Scary.
how that's going to happen if
Imagine
they can
that
stay
read option
healthy.
then.
I know. DeAndre Swift with the Bears, the Monty and Swift debate from the Bears Lions has now been flipped with Monty on the Lions and DeAndre Swift on the Bears. We're still waiting to hear from a couple guys like AJ Dillon, Zach Moss signed with the Bengals, Antonio Gibson with the Pats, and then a bunch of people we don't really care about. Moving on to wide receiver T. Higgins, franchise tagged. But did I see that correctly? Unless I
He
got duped,
requested
that
a
he
trade, I
requested a trade.
believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did see he requested a trade. So we'll see if he follows through with that or whatnot. Michael Pittman re-signed with the Colts after being franchise tagged, 3 years, 70 mil. Good deal for them. Mike Evans, we already know, 2 years, 41. He signed before it started. Darnell Mooney, 3 years, 39 million for the Falcons. My God, is that a bad contract?
I
Gabe
don't
Davis, same contract for the Jags. Um, I would rather have Gabe Davis, but it's me personally. Um, what else? Noah Brown re-signed with the Texans. That's huge. He had a great year last year. Kendrick Bourne re-signed with the Pats. We have a lot of wide receiver dominoes that haven't fallen yet. As I look at this, like there's like 30 names on here, and there's not many that have been signed. I'm trying to think. Oh, and then recently, Deontay Johnson got traded to the Carolina Panthers. So that's interesting. That's a big weapon for Bryce Young. I like that move for them. Do we know the details on that trade? We were hooping
Ooh,
in that one.
yeah.
I
Dante
think it
Jackson and a
was
sixth for
Oh,
it
right.
was
We talked about, yeah,
Deontay in a
Deontay
seventh.
Johnson for Dante Jackson. Yeah.
yeah, it
They
was
basically just swapped.
Deontay Johnson and a seventh for Jackson and then a sixth,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, I like that deal for the Panthers a lot.
Me too.
They needed to get
Moving
a
on.
receiver.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on to tight end here. Dalton Schultz resigns with the Texans. Great for them. Another guy like Noah Brown who was great for them last season. Hunter Henry back on the Pats. Noah Fant back on the Seahawks. Gerald Everett today signed with the Bears for 2 years, 12 mil. I like that deal for them. He's a good backup tight end. Colby Parkinson signed with the Rams, 3 years, 22 mil. A little bit of an overpay in my opinion there, but we move on. Doesn't matter very much. Mike Gesicki signed with the Bengals, 1 year, TBD, I guess. Um, Irv Smith Jr. signed with the Chiefs. I love that for them. Irv Smith Jr. is like sneaky, a pretty good tight end, and him behind Kelsey would be phenomenal. And then Jonnu Smith signed with the Miami Dolphins. So I guess as there's not really a big tight end that he could take targets away from like he did with Pitts in Atlanta. But we move on to tackle here. Michael Wenwu signed with the Pats again, 3 years, 57 mil. Um, Chukwuma Okorafor, that's always one I struggle with, signed with the Pats as well, for 1 year, 4 mil. So the Pats are beefing up. Outside of that, tackle been pretty quiet. Center, I mean, O-line in general has been pretty quiet outside of the interior, but center re-signed Andre James with the Raiders, 3 years, 24 mil. Jesus. Lloyd Cushenberry signed with the Tennessee Titans, 4 years, 50 mil. I told you it was going to be, there's a lot of names here. And that's about it for relevant center signings. Um, oh no, sorry, I missed one. Aaron Brewer signed with the Dolphins, 3 years, 21 mil. Um, Guards, Kevin Dotson re-signed with the Rams, 3 years, 48 million. Robert Hunt signed with the Panthers, 5 years, 100 million. Big deal there. Ezra Cleveland re-signed with the Jags, 3 years, 28 million. I love that for them. That's a good deal for Ezra Cleveland. I don't know how they got him to take that low of a pay cut, but they did. I know he had kind of a tough season, but overall in his career has been solid. Jonah Jackson, uh, Lions guard for a while. A lot of times hasn't been able to stay on the field, but when he is, he's fantastic. Signed with the Rams, 3 years, 51 mil. I'm happy he got paid. Speaking of the Lions, they got Graham Glasgow, re-signed 3 years, 20 mil. They signed him to a 1 year deal last season as just a backup guard for Big V and Jonah Jackson. And then he ended up having to play a lot of the season with injuries. And he was great for the Lions. He played some center, he played guard for them for most of the season. And 3 years, 20 mil is great for him. It looked like there was going to be a point where maybe he retired after this or last season when he signed the 1 year deal, but then he goes and gets three more. So he's going to be with the Lions for a while. Love to see that. John Runyon signed with the Giants, 3 years, 30 million. Damian Lewis signed with the Panthers for 4 years, 53 million. And John Simpson signed with the New York Jets for 2 years, TBD. Whew. Okay, that's it for all the offensive signings. I kind of said my piece on the guys I needed to say my piece on, so I can pass it to you, Zach.
Well, one of the deals that I really enjoyed seeing, and I think it's a really good fit, is Aaron Jones to Minnesota. He signed for a 1 year deal, $7 million, after getting cut from Green Bay after they had just signed Josh Jacobs. Alexander Madison just wasn't working out. He wasn't turning out to be the RB1 that they had hoped after he was backing up Dalvin Cook for that really long time. And Aaron Jones, in my opinion, he's a top five, maybe top seven back in the league when he's fully healthy, and he can bring some good diversity to their offense as both a pass catcher and running outside and inside the tackles. And it also helps a rookie quarterback if Minnesota decides to trade up or just stick and pick at, what are they, 12 or 13? I don't remember exactly. But the other contract and fit that I really like is Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. It's kind of basic, but I don't think, unlike you, Josh, I think it's a solid contract. I think he's gonna play into that 45 million a year cap hit. Atlanta was arguably a quarterback away from winning their division and probably a playoff game or two as well. And it finally gives their weapons a chance to really exceed within their roles with an actual competent quarterback. So just because bouncing between Desmond Ritter and Taylor Heineke, that's just not going to cut it. Kirk Cousins, he was having an MVP caliber season before he got hurt, and he was doing a solid chunk of that without Justin Jefferson as well. So having Kyle Pitts, who you can argue will have a similar role to TJ Hawkinson, who's getting like 7 to 10 catches almost every game. Drake London, he's no Justin Jefferson, but he's still a number one receiver for them who will command a lot of targets. Now they have Darnell Mooney, who's really going to command a lot of targets from the slot. Then they got Algier and Bijan in the backfield, and probably a top 5-6 line in the league. So I think that's the exact piece that they needed to really get their offense off the ground with a new regime, an offensive scheme as well. I think it's a good move for them.
I just
Yeah,
want to
now
say about the Kirk Cousins contract, the per
Oh,
year isn't
jeez.
the problem for me. I just think the 4 years is kind of crazy. That's my issue with it, is the 4 years.
I agree. I think 4 years might be a smidge long, strictly because of age. But
He's gonna be 40 when that contract ends.
yeah, but I mean, hey, maybe he's still going to be producing at 40 because it's not like he's running around like a Lamar or Justin Fields or Kyler Murray where he needs his
Tore his
legs.
Achilles last season.
I mean, he's one of the last quarterbacks I mean, I think I said on last episode, he's one of the last quarterbacks where I was really worried about that injury impacting his play because he plays from within the pocket anyways. So I think he'll be okay.
We shall see.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay, but it'll be interesting to see how that works out for them years down the road. But on to defensive free agency signings. Again, there's a lot of them, just like offense. We'll start with interior defensive line. The main big one, Kansas City Chiefs re-signed Chris Jones, 5 years, $158 million. big to keep your best player. He helps them win games. He's just as important as he's more important than L'Jarius Sneed. So we'll see L'Jarius Sneed probably get traded within the next couple of days, but they get to keep Chris Jones. Justin Madubuike re-signed with the Ravens. They'd initially franchise tagged him, but he will sign a contract for 4 years, $98 million. Christian Wilkins signs with the Las Vegas Raiders, 4 years, $110 million. Nice move for the Raiders to help that D-line and go with Max Crosby. Leonard Williams re-signed with the Seahawks, 3 years, $64 million. Grover Stewart re-signs with the Colts, 3 years, $39 million. Big for them. Their defensive line struggled against the run with him out. It's important to keep him. Daquan Jones re-signs with the Buffalo Bills, 2 years, $16 million. Javon Kinlaw is going to leave the 49ers for the New York Jets, 1 year contract. A'Shaun Robinson signs with the Carolina Panthers, 3 years, $22.5 million. Their defense was solid last year, so nice to add something after losing Dante Jackson a corner. But Raekwon Davis, Indianapolis Colts, 2 years, $14 million. Probably just a rotational player to throw in there when Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner aren't on the field. Bilal Nichols signs with the Arizona Cardinals, 3 years, $21 million. And that's pretty much it for interior defensive line. On to edge defenders, a lot of big ones at the top. Josh Allen, he was franchise tagged 1 year, $24 million. Important to keep him. That is the motor of their defense. Brian Burns was franchise tagged by the Panthers, but has been traded to the New York Giants, who have started to develop a pretty good D-line there now with him on the outside, Kayvon Thibodeau. It'll be interesting to see how that works out for him defensively. Danielle Hunter today shocks and signs with the Houston Texans, 2 years, $49 million. That's a very, very good signing for the Texans. It's going to help D'Amico Ryans. That defense is only going to get better. They were pretty solid last year, and now adding an elite pass rusher who just had a career high in sacks is huge. Bryce Huff signs with the Philadelphia Eagles, 3 years, $51 million. That's a nice contract. Very good pass rusher. Jonathan Grenard signs with the Vikings, 4 years, $76 million. So basically a swap between him and Danielle Hunter there. Zadarius Smith re-signs with the Cleveland Browns, 2 years, $23.5 million. Nice to keep that partner with Myles Garrett. Leonard Floyd signed with the San Francisco 49ers, 2 years, $20 million. Just a solid piece to have on the D-line. Danico Autry signs with the Houston Texans, 2 years, $20 million. He likes to stay in the AFC South. He was a member of the Colts, then the Titans, now the Texans. All he's got left is the Jags before he retires. Dorrance Armstrong signs with the Washington Commanders, 3 years, $33 million. Nice signing for them. Dan Quinn gets to keep one of his guys from Dallas. He's been doing that a lot recently. Brandon Graham re-signs with the Eagles for 1 year. AJ Epinesa re-signs with the Bills, 2 years, $12 million. Nice to keep that piece. He was solid for them. Big signing for the Lions. He's dealt with injuries, but Marcus Davenport, 1 year, $6.5 million. I think that's a great contract for them. Help the D-line, which had its struggles, but this should help improve it. Tyquan Lewis re-signs with the Colts, 2 years, $12 million. Nice depth signing. Yetur Gross-Matos signs with the 49ers, 2 years, $18 million. So just another rotational piece for the Niners. They already have a great D-line, but we'll see how that goes. Some big ones still out there. Carl Lawson, Calais Campbell, Chase Young, Jadeveon Clowney. But on to linebackers. The big one today, Patrick Queen signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 3 years, $41 million. I think that's a great signing for them. Their defense is only going to get better with that. Great linebacker to have. Frankie Louvu from the Panthers signs with the Washington Commanders, 3 years, $31 million. I think that's also a very good deal. I'm shocked to see the Panthers let him go. He was great for them last season. Like I said earlier, their defense was solid. It was really the offensive struggles that hurt them. Levante Davis stays in Tampa Bay, his home, 1 year contract. Jordan Brooks is going to leave Seattle to sign with Miami. 3 years, $26 million. Nice signing for them. Azeez Al-Shire signs with the Houston Texans. He had been with the 49ers with D'Amico Ryans, and now he's going to go back to D'Amico Ryans. The Texans are making some great moves on the defensive side of the ball. Josie Jewell signs with the Carolina Panthers, 3 years, $22.5 million. Nice signing. Drew Tranquil signs with the Kansas City Chiefs, 3 years, $19 million. Nice to keep him. Jordan Hicks signs with the Cleveland Browns, 2 years, $8 million. Willie Gay from the Chiefs signs with the New Orleans Saints, 1 year contract. Anthony Walker signs with the Miami Dolphins for a 1 year contract, and Kenneth Murray signs with the Tennessee Titans, 2 years, $15.5 million. Still some big ones out there. Shaquille Leonard, Isaiah Simmons, Denzel Perryman, Zach Cunningham, Bobby Wagner, Jerome Baker, Devin White, just to name a few. And now to cornerback. The big one we'd already talked about, Jalen Johnson re-signs with the Bears 4 years, $76 million. L'Jarius Sneed was franchise tagged by the Chiefs. He'll be traded here soon. Chidobe Awuzie signs with the Tennessee Titans, 3 years. I'd said last week they needed to get help in the secondary, and they make a move there to grab a cornerback. Kenny Moore re-signs with the Indianapolis Colts, 3 years, $30 million. He becomes the highest paid nickel corner in NFL history. Well deserved. He's great. I think he's probably worth more than that, but that's just the price they pay for nickel corners. Sean Murphy Bunting signs with the Arizona Cardinals, 3 years, $25.5 million. Keyshawn Nixon re-signs with Green Bay, 3 years, $18 million. Emmanuel Mosey, who came back from a torn ACL just to tear his ACL, re-signs with the Lions, 1 year, $1.125 million. Jeff Okudah signs with the Houston Texans, another team that's going to try to take a chance on him for 1 year, $4.75 million. And Dante Jackson was traded to the Steelers. Another trade that happened with cornerback Carlton Davis was traded to the Detroit Lions. Some of the free agents still on the board: Kendall Fuller, Stephon Gilmore, Adoree Jackson, Steven Nelson, Christian Fulton, Rocky Yassin. A couple solid ones out there, but on to safeties. This is a stacked safety free agency class. We've seen a decent amount of them off the board already. We saw Antoine Winfield get franchise tagged, well deserved. He was, in my opinion, probably the best safety in the NFL last year with Tampa Bay. 1 year, that franchise tag is $17 million. Kyle Duggar was franchise tagged by the New England Patriots, 1 year, $13 million. Xavier McKinney had a great season last year in New York. He signs with Green Bay for 4 years, $68 million. Geno Stone signs with Cincinnati, 2 years, $50 million. CJ Gardner-Johnson is now back in Philadelphia after a little bit of an argument with the fan base while he was in Detroit, but now he's back, 3 years, $33 million. What?
I said a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Darnell Savage signs with Jacksonville for 3 years. Jeremy Chin has signed with the Commanders. Commanders are making some nice moves on the defensive side of the ball. They need to. Their defense was terrible last season. Jalen Mills to the New York Giants, 1 year. Kevin Byard to the Bears for 2 years. Brandon Jones to the Broncos, 3 years, $20 million. Taylor Rapp, Buffalo Bills. He re-signs with the Buffalo Bills, 3 years, $10 million. They needed to keep some sort of safety. They've lost their other ones. Some of the big ones still on the board. Cameron Curl is on the board. Julian Blackman, Jordan Fuller, Jordan Whitehead, Deshaun Elliott, Tayshaun Gibson, Mike Edwards. Eddie Jackson is still on the board. Jordan Poyer did sign with the Miami Dolphins for a 1 year deal. And I think that is basically it for defensive free agency.
All right, so a couple of the signings that I really think are good fits. Bryce Huff to Philly for only 3 years, $51 million. This gives them a little bit of leeway to trade Josh Sweat or Reddick for picks to kind of give themselves some cap relief and a couple swings and probably day two of the draft. And Huff, he was honestly really good last year. He played alongside Quinnen Williams, who is probably a top three defensive tackle in the league, but he's also he's play with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, who have shown flashes and are just very talented individuals as a whole. The other move that I really liked was, I can't leave my Bears off of this. Kevin Byard to Chicago for 2 years for $15 million. You're basically going to get Eddie Jackson level production or better for only half the price. And even on a really, really, really rough Philly pass defense, he made a couple really nice plays. And knock on wood, he hasn't missed a game in his entire career. So one play in particular that I really enjoyed, I've seen it on Twitter a couple times now. I went back and watched the Chiefs game where the Eagles and Chiefs played. Byard actually picked off Mahomes and kind of baited him a little bit. It was kind of nice. So that gives me a little bit of hope. Byard is 31, if I'm not mistaken. So we're only going to have him for 2, maybe 3 or 4 years if he's performing well, but that's just because of age. And I think Ryan Poles didn't trust the what's it called? The rookie class of safeties enough to take a swing on one in day 2 or early day 3. So I trust his judgment. I think this is a solid pickup, and I think it rounds out a very nice, a nice secondary for Chicago.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple things about the Lions moves that they made before we move on here. They did trade for Carlton Davis. I'm indifferent about this trade. I don't love giving up the Hawkinson pick for him. I'm not gonna lie, I don't love that. But I will say although his stats were not phenomenal last year, they were solid, and he was the cornerback one for a lot of the season for the Bucks. I think between that trade and signing Marcus Davenport, I think you have just two boom or bust scenarios there. If they could stay on the field, they're going to be productive, and both of them are going to be great for the contracts you have them on. Especially Davenport 1 year, 6.5 mil. But you have Carlton Davis on an expiring. Worst case scenario, he plays bad. You don't sign him next year, and you lose a third rounder. You gain 2/6, which is bad, of course, but it could be worse than if you go and as much as I still want L'Jarius Sneed, even though they're not going to get him. If you go and you trade a third or a second even for Sneed, you sign him to a 4 year deal and he has a fall off, then you're in a bad contract situation. So I think maybe the Lions wanted to avoid that at all costs, although I do think that would be a good pickup. And I like the Davenport pickup. I mean, worst case scenario for him is he doesn't play, you lose 6.5 mil for 1 year. It's not that big of a deal. They did sign Amik Robertson today from the Raiders for 2 years, 9.25 mil. I like that move a lot. He's very highly praised among the Raiders coaching staff and a lot of guys around the league. So I like that move for them. Another cheap contract, a guy that if he isn't great, it's not going to absolutely kill you. And he's a scrappy guy who was a part of a Raiders defense that had a really, really good back 2/3 of the season. We'll talk about the Raiders here in a bit, but yeah, those are basically the only moves that I haven't talked about. Oh, Jalen Reeves-Maybin as well, All Pro, one of the best special teams players in the league. You signed him for 2 more years, 7.5 mil. So I like that as well. But unless you guys have anything else to say about free agency here.
I think he's the new NFLPA president or something.
Yeah, I did see that as well. I don't know if he's the
Really?
president or like just part of the board or I don't know, but he's in there.
He's up there. That's crazy.
He's making some moves up there, but all right then. We can move on here to the AFC and NFC West recaps. Starting with the Los Angeles Chargers, they were 10-7 in 2023, and this year they were 5-12. A brutal season for them. They always are going to have high expectations. They have so many star players on their team. They spend so much money. You have one of the better quarterbacks in the league in Herbert, but you lose Herbert, which of course is going to take the season for them. But they were under 500 before that, and they weren't playing any defense whatsoever. So they were already in a bad spot before that. They fired Brandon Staley, which is good that you got him out of there when you could. And then you go and you hire Jim Harbaugh, which I think is a great hire. I think he can really turn around the culture there, a culture that needs a turnaround in the Chargers. Maybe you can start rallying some fans in if you start getting good, and then there you go. You're starting to build something there in LA. Once again for the Chargers, though, just an underperforming season with a lot of great players, a lot of players that you're going to lose this year now, especially with Khalil Mack, and then possibly one of your receivers. But the Chargers, I think they just have to have a decent offseason in the draft. But overall, I think they're going to be okay. I think getting Jim Harbaugh was the biggest thing they could have possibly done. If we're looking at the Chargers now and they have, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of a coach that would be very underwhelming for them. Um, what's the name of the
Mike
Titans guy?
McDonald's,
No,
Mike
McDonald I like. What's the Titans new coach? I
Brian
can't think of his
Callahan.
name. Callahan. I think if you go and you get Callahan instead of Harbaugh, I think you're looking at this a little bit different. But you get a big name in Harbaugh, a guy that's done it before, been to a Super Bowl, just won a national championship. I think you're looking up, and then you're obviously gonna have Justin Herbert next season. So they're gonna be okay, but a really brutal season for Chargers fans overall.
Yeah, I completely agree. The talent on the roster really didn't show up at all in the way we all thought it would. The three of us were making fun of them all year, especially when we were picking the games. Just can you trust them? But you really couldn't for a majority of the year. Eckler, he was pretty bad. Keenan Allen, he had a career year on with over 1,200 yards and 108 catches. For those of you that had him on your fantasy team, he was dominating there as well. Justin Herbert was good, but he hurt for I think the last 4 games of the year. Khalil Mack on the defensive side, he had his best sack total year since 2015 and a career high with 17 and a half. So that was really impressive. And Joey Bosa, it feels like he's been in this boat for the last couple years. He just can't stay healthy. But like you mentioned, Josh, with Bosa and Mack, very interested to see if they kind of just dangle him out there as trade bait or cut him outright in a couple months. So a team that needs an edge rusher, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Chicago. I mean, maybe go get a guy that I think a jersey swap wouldn't be too difficult in Khalil Mack. So he could give you a little bit of juice on a defense that's bookended by Jalen Johnson, Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, and Montez Sweat. I'm getting away from the point here, but they got to find a way to keep around Justin Herbert, or else they're just going to waste his prime. I think adding Jim Harbaugh, that was huge. Just compared to anybody else on the market, I think he was probably a really good fit for Justin Herbert. I think he's going to get a really solid team around him and just utilize the weapons to their fullest extent.
Yeah, not the season you wanted at all if you're the Chargers. Part of it was their own issues with their culture. Brandon Staley was just not a good coach. Injuries hurt him as well. Mike Williams tore his ACL pretty early in the season. He was off to a nice start. And after that, the offense wasn't as good without him. Obviously, the big injury with Justin Herbert and his finger in week 14. But by that point, the team was already pretty dead. It just made them worse with Easton Stick, only 16 points per game when he was behind center. Austin Eckler was not the same this year as he had been in prior years. His age seems to have finally caught up to him, looked slower. He dropped his output in basically every statistical category. Went from 13 rushing touchdowns last season to only 5 this season. Quentin Johnson was not great for him this year. He struggled getting open a little bit, but mainly the most important part was drops. Just way too many drops as a first-round receiver that you can't have, and it didn't help that the receivers picked after him had looked pretty good for most of the time. They're not in a great salary cap position, so they're going to have to figure that out. But luckily for them, they have Justin Herbert. He's one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. They just have to worry about getting out some of that regressing aging talent and getting in some younger guys to help this offense. Their defense was not good either. They were getting bullied a lot in the trenches, especially. Khalil Mack was great, like you guys said, but he's getting older and a big cap hit. I would kind of think they're going to move on from him, but we'll see what they do. They need to focus on helping that interior D line and stopping the run a little bit. But with Herbert at quarterback, but not Harbaugh at coach, I think this team will always be dangerous. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason. They're going to need to get a running back. Maybe Harbaugh goes and gets his guy Blake Corum, but with Herbert, you should still have a future.
Yep. Moving on here to the Denver Broncos. They were 5-12 in 2023, 8-9 in 2024. They started off the season 1-5, and all hope was kind of lost, but they figured out a way to get it all together, and they went on a big win streak. They got all the way up to 7-6 from 1-5. So that 6-1 stretch was obviously very huge for them, and just building everything together because everything was looking like, oh, we just traded for Sean Payton essentially, and then we got Russ, and I mean, as we know, the Russ situation isn't going to work out for them. But regardless, you got the Sean Payton thing figured out, and he's going to remain at head coach. Thank God that didn't, for him, turn out into a complete dumpster fire. The defense for the Broncos was really bad early on. They were just giving up a ton of points, but they ended up being okay towards the end of the season. They were getting stops. Their offense never really got it fully together, but their defense did. They had some fines and some suspensions for some illegal hits in the secondary, but their defense was gritty to say the least. They did end up getting rid of Russ, like I alluded to, and they're going to start fresh at quarterback. It's interesting to me what they're going to do at quarterback overall. Do you go and you draft a guy? Do you go and trade for Justin Fields? That's one spot that I don't really see people talking about for Fields is Denver. I don't know why Denver wouldn't be a spot. They have nobody. Like they
Call me
just got rid of
crazy.
Russ.
The fit's not there. What Sean
Uh,
Payton wants from a quarterback, Justin
I
Fields can't
agree.
do.
I agree, but at the end of the day, like if the Bears are going to trade him for like if it gets bad enough where he goes for like a sixth or a seventh, then like why not at that point? But
They'll get him as a
especially if you
bridge
don't
guy.
have a quarterback. Yeah. That's what I like I just don't see why you wouldn't do that. And I think the value could go that low for the Bears, especially if the Seahawks go and get somebody now, or if they make it apparent they're going to draft somebody, trade up maybe. But we'll see. Back to the Broncos though. I believe in Sean Payton and what this team was towards the middle of the season. I think they were really good. I think they can be really good. They just have to answer that quarterback question, and they have a decent amount of talent overall. Did we talk about the Jerry Judy trade?
I
I
don't
don't know
think
if
we
we
did.
did. They
I don't think we did.
they they did trade Jerry Judy. But yeah, I think the Broncos have enough talent around them. I think if they get a quarterback, and then Sean Payton's still one of the better coaches in the league, in my opinion, and I think he'll be able to figure it out for them in Mile High.
Yeah, he's definitely up there, but even though the record doesn't look that bad, I don't think this team really took this year. Russ was all he's gone now. Javonte Williams had a couple bright spots, but he was really inconsistent all year, especially as a receiver. Cortland Sutton gonna have a monster highlight reel from this year because of all those amazing catches. So that's really the brightest spot from their offense. Justin Simmons and Pat Surtain were great, but only one of them is on the roster due to kind of just salary cap issues, and honestly, it just looks like they're going to tank next year. So that's going to be what 2024 is going to be like for them. I don't expect anything crazy from them for a little bit. I'm expecting anywhere between like 3 to 6 wins, probably. Maybe I'm a little low on that. Maybe I'm underestimating Sean Payton, but I just don't see them winning a ton of games. I expect them to be in the hunt for a quarterback in 2025. I mean, this team's not too exciting to look at. I think they did. I don't remember, but this is a rough situation to be in.
Yeah, just a rough situation to be in. They're paying Russell Wilson a lot of money to play for the Steelers. I don't really want to talk about, well, you have to, but that situation as a whole is just so weird to me. They started the season 1-5. It was a rough start. Did not look good at all. They lost 70-20 against the Dolphins. The team looked dead. Garrett Bowles said he was tired of losing, and that's all he had done in his time in Denver. The team was just not in a good spot, but then they won 5 games in a row against some pretty good teams, 4 playoff teams. They beat the Packers, Chiefs, Bills, Vikings, and Browns. Their defense started to get better. Russell Wilson was playing some decent football, not turning the ball over. They were just finding ways to win games. Then they had a couple games where they just lost and really just couldn't overcome the bad start that they had. And then they decided to move on from Russell Wilson and bench him for Jarrett Stidham, which I still don't understand. You're paying Russell Wilson so much money and you give up on him basically a year and a quarter. Uh, they tried every possible way to save money and cut him. In the NFLPA statement on their investigation, they said that the Broncos informed Mr. Wilson and his agent that if Mr. Wilson did not renegotiate his contract to relinquish certain salary guarantees, the Broncos would remove him from the starting lineup. That it's just absurd. I don't understand it at all. I saw someone saying that Sean Payton was always yelling at him to try to get Russell Wilson to lash out back at him so that they could save money there somehow. I don't know, but just a wild scenario to trade for a guy and give up on him that fast. They had a few positives, like Zach said. Cortland Sutton looked great, career high 10 touchdowns. Marvin Mims was pretty good as a rookie. He was very good on special teams. But the disappointing guy in that room, like you guys had said, he got traded to the Browns. Jerry Jeudy. I'm shocked that his career has kind of went how it is. I was expecting him to be a stud coming out of college. He was great at Alabama. For a second there, I remember there being a possibility way before the season started in his last year in college that he could be the first overall pick. And now his season has kind of just gone downhill, his career. 54 catches, 758 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's still a solid receiver, just not that wide receiver one I was kind of expecting out of him. I don't know what direction this team is headed. Maybe they're a team that's in like the JJ McCarthy kind of area, Michael Penix, I don't know, but they really have no stability at quarterback. They're paying Russell Wilson $30 million to play for the Steelers, so uh, no clue how they're gonna navigate this.
Yeah, tough situation for them. But moving on here to the Las Vegas Raiders. In 2023, the Raiders were 6-11. In 2024, they were 8-9. The biggest thing for them is just getting the bad man Josh McDaniels out of town, getting that guy as far away from your organization as you can. Just a bad culture fit for them, bad culture fit for anybody, I would assume. And then you get AP in there, who everybody loved him. They're dominant around with interim head coaches. They really rally around those guys in Vegas. The Raiders defense, like I said earlier in this pod, they were really phenomenal for most of the season, especially the back couple thirds. They were fantastic. They were really keeping this team in games, getting them wins, got them all the way to 8-9, which is not a great record, but when you have a lot of holes around your team, it is a good record. They went and they beat Mahomes in Arrowhead as well, which is a big win for them. This team struggled to score at times. When you have AOC in there, who I do love AOC, but the offense as a whole, outside of Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, who they no longer have, is pretty, how do I put it? Bland. Not a good O
Lackluster.
line. Yeah, lackluster. Don't have many great targets after Adams and Jacobs, and their O line is not great. If they had a solid starting QB all season though, and no McDaniels, I think they could have been a playoff team. Their defense was that good towards the end of the year. I think they got to draft somebody or go for Fields next season, even though I don't think they are going to get Fields. I don't know yet. But you got to probably draft somebody then. But yeah, I love that they kept AP. That was the best move of their offseason so far. And I think the Raiders have a decently bright future if they can figure out the quarterback situation.
Breaking news from Ian Rappaport. kind of related to the Raiders, Austin
Oh
Hooper
wow,
he's signing a 1-year deal with the Patriots for 4.25 million. So kind of just interesting segue. But
cool.
yeah, I mean, I don't think Justin Fields is going to the Raiders just because if you're hiring Luke Getsy as an offensive coordinator, especially as
Right,
soon
yeah,
as
I
they
forgot
did,
about him.
you're
Sure.
banking on the fact that Fields was the issue in Chicago and vice versa. You don't trade for Fields and then go get Getsy because you're banking on Fields really just trying to make the most out of a shitty offensive coordinator situation. But back to the 2023 season for the Raiders. They had a mid-year coaching fire, which actually helped them. Antonio Pierce, like you mentioned, Josh, he seems to have the support of the locker room and then some. The only true bright spot that I really saw in their offense from this year was Devontae Adams. His production was sometimes rough because of the inconsistent target. That was because of the inconsistent quarterback play. Josh Jacobs, it felt like he took a massive step backwards compared to his 2020 season, which is, I believe, a key reason as to why the Raiders let him walk this year. And Max Crosby, he had a phenomenal year. He had a defensive player of the year type of year. And adding Wilkins to that defensive line will only make the defense better. I think they have a lot to build off of. They've got a lot of studs on both sides of the ball. Next year might be a little bit of a quiet year because they're going to be figuring out quarterback position, probably filling out receiver spots and tight end spots because they have what's his name? Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams at the top, and then not really much after that. But defensively, as long as you have Wilkins and Crosby healthy, I think they're going to be a unit to be fearful of, honestly.
Yeah, very disappointing start to this season. Uh, Josh McDaniels just didn't bring a good vibe to this team at all. Didn't have this team really wanting to play football. It seemed more like a job than, well, it is a job, but it seemed straight like a job, not like you're out there going and just playing a game. They were 3-5 and they decided to fire him, and that was the best move they could have made. They finally decided to let him go. They were able to have some fun on the football field. They moved on from Jimmy G, who had his struggles early in the season. Josh McDaniels really doesn't know how to coach NFL players, I guess. Antonio Pierce steps in. He did a great job as interim head coach. Aiden O'Connell looked okay, good enough to get wins. They were finding ways to win games. Pierce finished with a 5-4 record. They were able to finish 8-9. Just missed the playoffs, but Antonio Pierce coached himself into another chance this season. Max Crosby, his best player. Max Crosby loves AP. He was phenomenal all season, continues to be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Robert Spillane was great at linebacker for them. Led him in tackles, finished with 148 tackles, second most in franchise history. And offensively, even with AOC at QB, Jacoby Myers was still able to look pretty good. Devontae Adams was solid. Devontae, not his best season, but 1,114 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, 103 receptions. Pretty good. I was hoping to see more of Michael Meyer. Not too much of him, but hopefully he can take a step forward next season with whoever they decide to go with at quarterback, which is really the whole uh, kind of their big offseason move is what they'll do at quarterback. They did sign Pro Bowl quarterback Gardner Minshew to a 2-year deal, so it'll be interesting to see if he's the starter or if they'll stick with AOC or if maybe they go for a rookie. Um, but yeah, Antonio Pierce came in, saved his team, and now they have a semi-bright future instead of just in that dark hole with Josh McDaniels.
Yep, finishing off the AFC West here with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2023. They were 14-3 and won the Super Bowl. In 2024, they were 11-6 and won the Super Bowl. I mean, what is there to say? It's the
Yeah.
Chiefs. This is the best defense in the Mahomes era. Giving him a great defense is just kind of a cheat code. It's going to be really, really hard to beat Patrick Mahomes led team with a good defense for his entire career. They did struggle to their standards in the regular season, but as the same as the Patriots dynasty, the regular season struggles just don't matter because you know at the end of the day, Mahomes is going to be better than the coach on the other, or sorry, the quarterback on the other side of him. Andy Reid's going to be better than the coach on the other side of him in the playoffs, and there's really just nothing you can do about that. I don't want to say you have to get lucky, but you almost have to get lucky against them. None of that really matters because you just have two of the best players in the league, especially with Kelsey, who isn't retiring now, which is good for them, big time. But at the same time, as great as Travis Kelsey is, as much as I respect him, I I think if you go and you put, trying to think of who would be a like if you put like Laporta on that team, I still think they're great. If you put who's a worse tight end than Laporta, that's Kyle Pitts. I think if you put Kyle Pitts on the Chiefs, I think they're still as
Let's
good.
whoa. Let's
It's
slow down a little
Mahomes,
bit.
dude.
No,
It's
no, no, no. I'm
Mahomes.
talking worst tight end Laporta. Let's slow down on the Kyle Pitts hate here.
Kyle Pitts is a worse tight end than Laporta. I don't think that's a hot
Yeah, I'm
take.
taking Laporta.
Yeah,
Oof.
I mean, Laporta had a better
I just
season
don't
this year
like
than
how you
Kyle
said
Pitts
it
had in
so
his coach.
easily.
I mean, he is. I mean, he's not that
Ugh.
much worse than Laporta. He's still top 10, but like Laporta had a better season this year than Pitts has ever had. But regardless, that's neither here nor there. But anyways, I think you can, as important as some of these players are, we saw the same thing with Tyreek Hill. You can plug and play another receiver, and it's still Patrick Mahomes. It's still Andy Reid. They're still going to be able to go out there and win. So I think as much as everyone in the Chiefs organization was dreading a Kelsey retirement, I still think they would recover from that well, and they would be able to continue the dynasty. Chris Jones is the biggest question mark going into the season. They signed him by week 2, extended him the other day, but I know that Clark Hunt is one of the most hated owners in the NFL, even by his own team.
Oh, why?
But
Because of the survey.
yeah, dead last. But um, that's what good organizations do. They don't drag things out. You get to week 2, you get the deal done, you get him back on the field, and that's what they had to do. And then you sign him to an extension pretty quickly in the offseason. So at the end of the day, I mean, what are we gonna do? Critique a team that just won back-to-back Super Bowls and it's a hell of a chance to go get 3 in a row. But uh, good season for the Chiefs, I guess.
Sorry, I'm watching. I think Bedard just netted one. But
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to critique the back-to-back champs. They're shooting for 3 in a row next year. Mahomes was Mahomes. Pacheco had a really solid sophomore year. Rasheed Rice was kind of a surprise to the offense. He won over wide receiver one within that group, and I think he gained Mahomes' trust this year. Mahomes and Kelsey wasn't the best that we have ever seen they've been at, but they were still very good. But Josh, like you said, just a few minutes before, and probably a couple months ago, that towards the end of the regular season, Kansas City's offense was very iffy the entire year, but in the postseason, Reid and Mahomes, they buckled down. They play great when it matters the most in the playoffs and eventually the Super Bowl. Chris Jones, he very much earned that extension that he just got and continues to show why he is one of the best defensive players on the planet. And Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed were great in that secondary and really anchored that young defense. So they've got some, as crazy as it sounds, they've got some young pieces they can build around. They got veterans who are solidified for 5+ years, and you've got Travis Kelsey, who may have a little bit of a off the field distraction with all these concerts he's going to out of the country, but when it all matters, he's going to show up. He's going to give you 5 catches for 100 yards and probably a touchdown in those most important games of the year. And Mahomes, he's going to be Mahomes. So you can't critique this team. They are a dynasty. They will probably be a dynasty until Mahomes retires. And it sucks to see during our lifetimes, especially for you, Mike, because you're in the same conference. At least Josh and I don't have to worry about seeding against Mahomes year in and year out. But if one of us makes it to the Super Bowl, it's more likely than not that Mahomes is going to be waiting for us on the other side.
Yeah, then this is the second dynasty in my lifetime now in the AFC. But after kind of a down regular season for the Chiefs, where their offense didn't look as good as it had in prior season, they had their struggles. Kelsey had a struggle, especially late in the season. They really didn't see much of the ball. I don't know where the team just figures it out just in time for the playoffs. They go on a Super Bowl run and win a Super Bowl, and they're now a modern day dynasty. They're led by the best quarterback in the league, uh, Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But really, it was part of this was really the elite defense led by Steve Spagnuolo. One of the best defenses in the league, if not the best defense. Consistently one of the top units all season. Like you said, Chris Jones had been phenomenal. Nick Bolton had been phenomenal. L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie are just two phenomenal corners. Luckily for the NFL, one of them, L'Jarius Sneed, will hopefully be off their team next season. But the offense didn't look great, and then the playoffs, they figure it out. Mahomes in the regular season still finished with over 4,000 passing yards. Did have 14 interceptions, which didn't feel great for Patrick Mahomes. They didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver all season, but in the playoffs, they figured it out. Kelsey was phenomenal. Rashee Rice was phenomenal. He emerged towards late in the season, finished with 938 yards. Kelsey finished with only 984 receiving yards. He didn't get to 1,000 yards for the first time in a pretty long time. But they go to the playoffs, and they had definitely their toughest route to the Super Bowl, having to play in the freezing cold against Miami, had to go to Buffalo, had to go to Baltimore, and then had to play the elite 49ers team in the Super Bowl, and they were able to run the table and beat all those teams. Kelsey Mahomes were phenomenal. Pacheco was also phenomenal for them for most of the season. It's unfortunate that this team is not going to go anywhere soon. We saw Mahomes restructure his contract today to save him 20 million this season. Um, really not much you can say. They're a dynasty.
Yep. What are you gonna say about the Chiefs? I mean, I can't even think of one criticism at this point. But
Yeah.
um, moving on to the NFC West, starting out with the Arizona Cardinals, they were 4-13 in 2023, 4-13 in 2024. Overall, kind of a successful bad season, to put it that way for the Cardinals. Kyler recovered really well. You confirmed that he's the guy. There were question marks going into the season. Do they try to tank and get Caleb Williams and trade Kyler? I've always been a big Kyler guy. As much as I really, really like Caleb Williams, it's a situation where if I don't know because the extension, but if I'm the Cardinals and I had the first overall pick, I think I probably trade it and I'd just try to get whatever I can out of it, trade down to like 5 and rock with Kyler just because Kyler's a really, really good quarterback. And honestly, I think he's in one of the most underrated players in the NFL right now. They're going to end up getting Marvin Harrison most likely, which that was another thing that a lot of people were saying earlier in the season. Maybe the Cardinals get the first pick, keep Kyler and draft Marvin Harrison. Now, as it always does when we have a tackle or a receiver projected to go high in the draft earlier in the season, quarterbacks emerge. Teams need quarterbacks. It's always going to be quarterbacks at the top. And Marvin Harrison, who could be the number one pick if quarterback didn't exist as a position, is now going to fall to 4, and they're most likely going to get him there. Gannon, he's an okay head coach. He started out really low with all the pew pews. Everybody was all explosives. Everybody was all upset about that, but he turned out to be an okay head coach. Yeah. Paris Johnson, solid season. There were some question marks early with him. Ended up having a solid season overall. We won't really know with this team what the state of this team is until we get a full Kyler Gannon season, because you really just can't judge them otherwise. So I don't want to give any like, oh, this team's in a great spot, they're in a bad spot. I don't think we really know what spot they're in. We'll know at the end of next season, but for now, I think they had a successful bad season.
I completely agree. Surprisingly enough, this team was in quite a few games that they probably shouldn't have been in. Don't forget, they even beat the Cowboys in the early part of the year. Kyler was pretty solid when he came back. He was shaking off the rust for the most part. Josh Dobbs, well, he was fun for a little while that little magical run was happening. They desperately need a wide receiver one because Hollywood Brown definitely wasn't cutting it, and he's a free agent. So luckily they'll have a chance at Marvin Harrison Jr. At pick number 4. But if all hell breaks loose, either Washington or the Patriots decide to go Marvin Harrison Jr. with their pick, they'll have a nice consolation prize with Malik Neighbors, who I think is not far off from being wide receiver one. If it was anybody but Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors would be receiver one. So regardless of what happens, they're walking away with an alpha receiver in this draft. Trey McBride, his emergence was really clutch and gives Kyler a weapon for next year and beyond. The defense needs a little bit of work. Nobody really jumped out at me when watching them play, but Gannon was a pretty solid coach. And even after that cringe introduction, they're trending in the right direction. And like you mentioned, Josh, we're going to get a clear picture of this team after we see Kyler with an entire offseason of getting used to the system, getting used to the new weapons, all that good stuff that relatively young quarterback can use. Because Kyler's not perfect. It's going to take some time to get off of Call of Duty and then jump back into the practice vest and all that stuff. But I'm very intrigued to see where the Cardinals go because quarterback changes everything. And I agree with you, Josh. Kyler is a severely underrated one. He's probably in my top 10, top 9. It's just recency bias when he was playing. He wasn't stacking wins, but that's not his fault. The roster was very depleted. So next year could be a very interesting one for the Cardinals if they stack talent in this draft.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think this was kind of a successful, just bad season. Finished 4-13, but you had a lot of positives with Kyler Murray. Gannon looked like he was starting to develop a good culture. 3 of their 4 wins came against playoff teams. Kyler Murray looked pretty solid coming off of a torn ACL. His mobility didn't look like it really had taken that much of a hit. They never really came to a game and looked like they were just getting ran over. Um, they played hard for a team that only had 4 wins. The defense had its moments where it looked good, but really just lacks talent on that side of the ball. They have a lot of work to do on the defensive side. Buda Baker was really disappointing. Kaiser White was nice this season, but just a lot of work to do over there. Offensively, though, they had a lot of positives. James Conner was very good for them. Finished with over 1,000 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns. Trey McBride, like you guys said, when Kyler Murray came back, he was very good. He led the team in receiving yards with 825, with Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown out from a decent amount. Uh, Kyler didn't really have a wide receiver 1-2 throw to. And so that's why I'm with you guys. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. on this team would be scary, and I'm very excited. I hope that happens. That's my dream scenario for the Cardinals. Paris Johnson Jr., the rookie tackle, he looked very promising out there. That was a good thing for them. He played all 1,065 snaps this season, was very vital to helping James Conner in the running game. They have only 4 wins, but you still have that second first round pick this season. You have your own. You can stack talent with Marvin Harrison at wide receiver, and maybe with that second pick, you try to get someone defensively to help you there. So nice season for them, considering they only had 4 wins.
Now, off topic here, but speaking of the Cardinals, the Louisville Cardinals just fired head coach Kenny
No.
Payne after 2 very bad seasons.
Wow.
Hopefully, he will come back to Poppy Calipari and join
Did,
the Kentucky bench once again. But that was a very unsuccessful stint
yeah, did you
for
see
the Louisville
the
Cardinals.
did you see the Louisville fan at their game today?
No.
He started a Keep Kenny Payne chant. One fan, he
Oh,
started a Keep Kenny Payne chant, and he was trying to get people to join into him, and everyone
no
just
one
started
joined.
booing him.
That's
Oh,
crazy.
Rough go for
very
Kenny
rare
Payne.
you see a keep insert coach chant
Yeah.
ever. But yeah, unfortunate for little brother there. But moving
Whew.
on here to
Man.
the Seattle Seahawks, 2023, 9-8, lost in the wild card round. 2024, 9-8, did not make the playoffs. They're still stuck in this post Russell Wilson middle ground, post Legion of Boom middle ground. Geno Smith is an okay quarterback when he has time, but he's not always going to have time. That's just not how the NFL works. And I don't know if he can be a difference maker at any point this far into his career. But he is still a proper game manager. I think he can be a quarterback if you're not a super serious playoff team and you don't have a ton of talent around you. I think he can be a guy that he can go usher you out and get you some wins. But for the Seahawks, you're an organization that has had a lot of success in recent years. And if you want to continue to be successful, especially with a lot of the guys that you have on your roster, I just don't think that's the route you want to go. They have an okay defense. They hit on picks such as Devin Witherspoon, who was great this season. I think the defense has potential. A lot of young guys on that defense. We'll see if they get Bobby Wagner back this year, but their defense was solid this year. They fired Pete Carroll after the season, fired slash parted ways. That was Louisville was parted ways with Kenny Payne. Okay, but parted ways with Pete Carroll after the season. Sucks to see his career kind of come to an end, but apparently he's going to stay in the front office for them. They hired Mike McDonald as head coach. I like that hire. He had a lot of success in Baltimore this season. I think that's going to be a good hire for them, especially with a lot of the I mean, there was a good amount of solid head coaching options, but there were some teams that had to settle. They didn't have to settle. I think they just need to move on a QB with Geno Smith in there. I think you go draft somebody or maybe go make a trade for somebody out there. But regardless, the Seahawks are in this middle purgatory ground, and I'm not sure where they go from here because they do have talent, but you can waste talent.
Yeah, this is a team that I would look out for Justin Fields, especially if they're
Yes.
looking to move on, because it just makes sense to me. But we're gonna their season. I remember, I think it was the Saints in the last episode where I said that their season was, and that negative side of like, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? A very optimistic view of it. I feel like optimistic. I'm gonna say this year. It was a solid year from this group. G was fine. He showed a flash at parts. DK was fine. Lockett was good in spurts. Jackson Smith and Jigwa was good when he got the ball, but it's really hard to feed all the talent within that wide receiver room all at once, especially when you have K9, Zach Charbonnet out of the backfield as well. Wagner was a tackle machine, but that's not really anything new. He's just getting older. And they did cut Diggs and Adams as their safety, so they're going to have to find a couple new ones this offseason. This division is going to be really hard to predict, in my opinion, next year in terms of the top three, because you're going to have the Niners, who are probably going to regress a slight little bit just because of cap constraints, and Ayuk might be on his way out. I'll get to that in a little bit. The Rams, I'll get a little bit as well, but they definitely exceeded my expectations for this year. And Seattle, I mean, if Geno has another solid year, then maybe they go 9-8, 10-7, and they find themselves in a wild card spot. This division is it's pretty good overall. So it's going to be wait to see how they handle this offseason.
Yeah, disappointing. They had a pretty solid start. They were expecting to make the playoffs. That unfortunately for them did not happen. Geno Smith looked decent again, like he had the year prior. Did have some injuries that he dealt with that hurt him later in the season. Like you said, Zach Bobby Wagner was great, led the NFL in tackles, ties the franchise record. That's just what he does. It was nice for them to see their first round pick, Devin Witherspoon, was very good in his first season. Showed that he's worth that fifth overall pick. Some teams thought he might have reached for him, but he was phenomenal. This team has so much talent in a lot of areas. Three great receivers. They have a couple young tackles. Their running back room has two very good running backs. They had Bobby Wagner, but really they just need better pass rush. They need now to redo their safeties. Kobe Parkinson, they re-signed him at tight end. Boye Mafe was great for them. He had 9 sacks. Still need more pass rush. Leonard Williams, they were able to re-sign him after the trade during the season. I think it was smart for them to part ways with Pete Carroll. He had been there for so long. He is getting older. And now you bring in a young, defensive-minded head coach, Mike McDonald, to possibly bring some new innovation to this defense. Their offensive coordinator is their new offensive coordinator is former Washington offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. Uh, I like that move. I think it could be interesting to see if they don't decide to go for Fields or someone else in the draft. Go with Michael Penix, reunite him with his college offensive coordinator and see how that goes with Geno Smith possibly mentoring him. He is kind of an older uh, prospect, but that could be something to watch him stay in Washington. So overall, you wanted to make the playoffs, but you really kind of have a limit with Geno Smith at quarterback.
Yep, moving on here to the LA Rams. They were 5-12 in 2023 with the Stafford injury, the Cup injuries in 2024. They were 10-7, lost in the wild card round. Significantly overperformed this season. We were all low on them going into the season. Puka came out of nowhere. That's just unpredictable. Now they have two of the top wide receivers in the league. Great targets for a guy like Matt Stafford who's going to thrive in a situation like that. Their O-line overperformed as well, gave Stafford a ton of time, not making him having to do too much this season, even though he did have an injury at some point. The offense was just back into full top form. When you can score enough points, you're just going to be in a good spot in this league. The defense really overperformed. Guys like Byron Young, young guys were just great for them. And then, of course, you have Aaron Donald, who's going to go out there and do it for you every single time. But when you have such a good head coach and enough talent on offense, they're always going to be good with this core of Stafford, Cup, Donald, Puka now. So yeah, if they can keep those guys healthy, they're always going to be in it and they're always going to be dangerous to make a run in the playoffs. So I like the Rams.
I like him too. I think they massively exceeded my own personal expectations I had for him this year. Stafford was pretty good. Kyron Williams was great when he came back from his beginning of the year injury. Cup wasn't near his 2021 self, but he wasn't bad either. Puka was possibly the steal of the 2023 draft and could have won Offensive Rookie of the Year. He broke 2 records for rookie receiving as well. Aaron Donald was good as always. Kobe Turner was great for a rookie, and he was a Defensive Rookie of the Year finalist at the end of the year. And honestly, I think this team can definitely contend in 2024 with the solid free agency group and a couple home runs in the draft. Because you could find a guy like Puka in the fifth, third, fourth round, whatever. You could find a defensive Puka who's going to come off the edge opposite of Byron Young and team up with Kobe Turner and Aaron Donald. And just, you can get crazy pressure with those four. But I think they might go edge rusher with, I think they're at pick 20, but they're definitely shooting upwards in terms of trajectory.
Yeah, this was something I was really unexpected. One of the teams that I wasn't expecting to do that good, the Rams. They had a season far better than I expected. Like I said, they suffered from a loss in the wild card round of the Lions. But Matt Stafford, coming back off some injuries, was able to play most of the season. He looked pretty good. Finished with 3,965 yards, 24 touchdowns, 11 picks. They were able to find a gem in Puka Nacua, who had one of the best rookie wide receiver seasons of all time. Cooper Kupp was in and out of the lineup, finished with 737 yards and 5 touchdowns. This offense has a lot of weapons. Kyron Williams, they found him last year in the 2022 draft. He missed most of his rookie season with a high ankle sprain. But with Cam Akers cut early in the season, he showed out, finished with 1,144 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. Their offensive line was far better than we could have expected from them. They played pretty solid. And defensively, they kind of just held their own. Great third-year linebacker, Ernest Jones. He had a great season, 145 tackles. He led the team. Jordan Fuller was very nice for them at safety. Akello Witherspoon was their leading cornerback. He was phenomenal. 14 pass deflections. He had 3 interceptions. And obviously, they have one of the best defensive players of our generation. Aaron Donald was phenomenal, and he was able to help Kobe Turner lead the team in sacks with 9. So it's interesting to see a team with their top 2 sack uh, leaders is as 2 defensive tackles, and that's how it was for the Rams. Aaron Donald finished with 8, but this season was far better than I expected. But I should have never doubted Matt Stafford, Aaron Donald, and one of the best head coaches, Sean McVay.
Yes, and finishing off with our last team here, the 49ers. They were 13-4 in 2023, lost in the conference championship. 2024, they were 12-5, lost in the Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs. They dominated on both ends for most of the season. The only bad stretch they had is when they were missing CMC, Debo, and Trent Williams. For 2 or 3 games there, they went on a tough stretch, but after that, before and after, they were great. Brock Purdy, you now know is the guy. There may be some question marks, especially with the injury last season. But he comes out, has an MVP caliber season. He can be the guy for them as long as they have a very strong core around him like he does right now. Shanahan sadly choked again. But what are you going to do? I mean, he's still one of the best coaches in the league. Even if he continues to have dominant regular seasons, keeps getting to the Super Bowl or the conference championship and keeps losing, I mean, what are you going to fire him? You can't fire him. Like it's Kyle Shanahan. You know he's one of the best, smartest head coaches in the league. That's just something you're gonna have to deal with and just hope that he eventually breaks through. Not many changes the Niners can really make to get better at this point, right? I mean, like they're just dominant all around. Their only issue was they had some injuries in the secondary this season with Hufanga. But if the secondary can stay healthy, get a little healthier, I should say, maybe they win. But it's always going to be Super Bowl or bust with this core. And like, who are you going to get rid of? How are you going to make this team better? So I think it's just you just got to keep running this core out and hope you eventually luck into one. Because when you have a team this good, especially if maybe you get like Kansas City has a big injury or maybe the Lions have a big injury in the NFC, you're going to be able to skate to what's funny.
Not just sneaking in the lines with the Chiefs is funny.
I mean, they almost lost to the Lions on their way to
No, I
playing the
know.
Chiefs.
I know.
It's the
It's just
last two
funny.
teams they played.
It was
But
just funny.
there's no more sneaking the Lions in anymore. They're in. But regardless, maybe they catch some breaks, but you're not going to be able to make this team better. They're already so amazing. So we'll see how they do.
Yeah, I mean, Purdy was pretty good. CMC easily the best running back in the league, and all around just weapons in the league as well. Ayuk had a great breakout season. He was their leading receiver, but I don't even know what they're going to do with him. Are they going to trade him? Because I think it was his brother that posted like, yeah, this is why we leave San Francisco. You don't give your leading receiver only 3 catches in the Super Bowl, like something like that. But Debo was really good as well. The defense was really good, anchored by Javon Hargrave, who was a new acquisition from last year in free agency. Nick Bosa, Hufanga, who before he got hurt, at least in the secondary, Travarius Ward, Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw. And they had a great playoff run, but they just didn't get it done when it mattered most in the Super Bowl. But like you said, Josh, it's hard to fire a guy when he loses to arguably one of the best coach quarterback duos in league history in Mahomes and Reed. They're just so good. It's you just can't fire a guy for losing to Mahomes.
Yeah, I have the same thing. Basically, as you guys, there's really not much this team can do to get better. They were so close, up by 10 again in the Super Bowl, and were unable to finish the job. The Drake Greenlaw injury was just such a rough thing to happen, just running on the field in the Super Bowl, and now he has a torn Achilles, is going to miss most of next season. A lot went wrong in that football game for him with the CMC fumble, the muff punt. They just made too many mistakes in the big game, and it didn't go their way. But they just have so many elite players at every level. I mean, Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the league, finished with over 1,000 yards. Ayuk was phenomenal, finished with 1,342 receiving yards. Debo, obviously, CMC was the offensive player of the year. He was great. Brock Purdy was an MVP candidate for most of the season, was the favorite at a point. And defensively, they have just as many studs, like you guys said, Travarius Ward, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead. The list just goes on and on. Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw are one of the best linebacker duos in the entire NFL. Nick Bosa off the edge. They traded for Chase Young to add to more depth off the edge. The only really negative that they had throughout the season was losing Hufanga to a injury that put him out for the rest of the season. But one injury you should be able to overcome, especially if it's in the secondary. Um, I don't really know what they could do to get better. It's really just you have to just make the plays late in the season to win the game, be clutch. They fired Steve Wilkes, their defensive coordinator, after the Super Bowl. Maybe a scapegoat. I think it's more just probably coaching differences between him and Shanahan. They brought in Nick Sorensen to be their new DC. He was their defensive passing game coordinator and their nickels coach. But like I said, not much they could do to really improve this roster. It's just a matter of making the plays in the big games to finally put you over the hump.
Yep, and that about does it for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast, episode 50, the Big 5-0. We will be back next week to talk about the AFC and NFC North, as well as I'm assuming we'll touch on some March Madness bracket stuff as well, with the bracket coming out on Sunday and conference tournaments finishing up on Sunday as well. Until then, follow all of our links in the description, Spotify, TikTok, everything that we got down there. We'll see everybody in the next one.